Okay, well, welcome Gokulachandra and Sadhvi. Uh, I am quite excited to start this new series called the Sadhaka interviews. Basically, the idea is that I'm kind of like picking up from where the Sadhaka's journey series ended, and I'm thinking of starting with interviews with different devotees, but also expanding it to like maybe at some points to like panels and like different kinds of conversations that are not only about the sadhaka's journey, but also just kind of expand the scope of the whole thing. But we'll start off with Gokulachandra this week. Then I wanted to also say that the sadhaka's journey series was always like by far the most popular out of all the Tattva Vivek classes, and it makes a lot of sense because like you can hear philosophy all day, but then to really get this like practical boots on the ground kind of experience of how like people's actual lives, of how bhakti plays out in their lives, it's somehow it's like a lot more compelling for us, and it's like kind of like speaks to us on the level where we're at, and like it's so much like relevant to our lives and stuff. So I really wanted to continue this kind of conversation, and it's also just a great way of kind of like getting to know different people in our sangha, because we're all over the place as a sangha. I mean, like all over the world, probably on every continent minus Antarctica practically. And so this is a great way, I think, to come together and learn about each other and learn to know each other. Of course, I know Gokul already, at least somewhat from previously, but a lot of you guys might not. So I guess with that, let's just jump into it. And I'm going to read a little bio that Gokulachandra wrote about himself. So let's start with that. So Gokulachandra, then Patrick, grew up as a Christian, inspired by the person and teachings of Jesus and his faith, and Gokul's faith was always very important to him. In his childhood, he was introduced to Krishna consciousness by his older brother, who started practicing bhakti after meeting some devotees in their hometown. Gokulachandra became very much attracted by how his brother changed as a person. Gokul thought to himself that there must be something very valuable in this process, and became inspired to start chanting. After his graduation, Gokulachandra moved to live in London, where he met his very good friend Ram Govinda. Ram Govinda invited Gokul to join him on his trip to Vrindavan, where Gokulachandra met Guru Maharaj, Srila B.V. Tripurari Maharaj, for the first time. After that, he tried to make an effort to see his guru at least once a year in Finland or Poland. In 2009, Gokulachandra went to Madhuban for a few months to join devotees in developing the project, and 3 years later, he quit his job and moved to live in Adaria. He stayed there for 2 years, and after a short stay in Costa Rica and Vrindavan, he moved back to Europe. Currently, Gokulachandra lives in London. He likes listening to Guru Maharaj's classes, cooking for Krishna and the devotees, gardening, and looking after cows, and doing kirtan. Okay, well, welcome, Gokul.
Thank you.
And yeah, nice to have you here. I would like to start with a question that goes right to the beginning. And basically, I'm interested in hearing, like, what was the first religious or spiritual experience that you remember from your childhood?
Wow, that's a good question. So I mentioned that I grew up as a Christian. So I think the first kind of experiences, that would be when I was maybe, I don't know, 6 or something like that. And I was always very attracted to prayer, to the idea that there is someone up there, that is that cares about you, and you can aspire to have a relationship with this person. So that would be I would go like every now and then to church, but I would pray like every day, I think. So I don't remember that much about what this kind of experiences were, but I know they were there because I know that it was always like quite important for me.
Sorry, I'm muting myself. So your parents, were they Christian, or like what I was wondering about is like that was the 80s, right? In Poland. and you were still a communist country back then. So like, were your parents Christian, and like, how was it back then in terms of like, could you be openly religious, or was it suppressed in any way? What was it like?
I think you could openly be definitely a Catholic. So Poland is predominantly Catholic. There's like 90 something percent people who belong to Catholic Church. So my parents, they're not practicing. My both of them, they grew up as Catholics, as Christians, but I wouldn't say that they practice. It's like very important, like in daily life for them. And but in terms of Krishna consciousness and practicing Krishna consciousness, that was a little while ago. So it wasn't that easy. It wasn't that easy because it was considered back then to be something very dangerous, even, something suspicious, something super, oriental. No one knows what it is, and there's these young people dancing on the street, and it looks kind of a little bit crazy. So it wasn't easy. I had many experiences when I was growing up at school. So when I was going to school, I had my teacher who was teaching us religion, and I remember I had like many kind of talks and arguments with her, and it wasn't that easy. I think it took many years for people to get used to being open to different, cultures, traditions. Back then it was a little bit different.
Yeah, I remember even, I think it was like 2013 or 14, I went to the Polish retreat with Guru Maharaj, and we were wearing devotional clothing, and there were these thugs at the airport, and they were like really aggressive. And I don't normally get that at the airport.
Really?
Yeah. So maybe it's still kind of like they have that Catholic and mixed with the communist idea about certain things. So I mean, overall it was fine, but there were these couple guys that were like quite intimidating. But so then I was also interested, like, would the government actually like suppress the devotees? Like you said that your brother became a devotee when you were a kid. So like, do you remember them getting on his case or the temple's case, or like, how did the government, if they did anything, what did they actually do?
No, I don't think the government was doing anything at this stage. It was already after the change of the Poland wasn't communistic anymore, but it took many years for the whole change kind of transfer to take place. So the government, or no one was really doing anything, but the mentality of people were everyone they were not really open to anything, from different culture, especially religion, because Poland is really a religious country. And so nothing kind of formal, nothing from government, but people were not that positively, looking at it. I think it took some time for them to get used to it.
Yeah, interesting. And then, so then, how old were you when your brother became a devotee?
I was quite young. I was I think maybe 8.
Oh, wow.
He became a devotee. Yes, he's 6 years older than me. So he was 13, 14 when he was practicing. So I was quite young, and as I mentioned, when he started practicing Krishna consciousness, I had no idea, of course, what it was. And I must say, I wasn't really. I was myself quite, careful and suspicious, and it's it's a different kind of religion and all that. But as I mentioned, I definitely I could see what influence it had on him. So how he changed as a person, and that made me think like this is. I mean, there's something there definitely, because for a young person who can be doing like literally anything, he's a grown up teenager. He could do whatever he wants, but he's just chanting and reading and praying. That was quite something.
So he was a pretty serious devotee then.
He was a quite serious devotee. He didn't practice for very long, so that was maybe like 2 years, but it was very intense. He was kind of living a temple kind of schedule in our flat, waking up at 4 a.m. doing arti, and he would shave his head. He'd see come when he was 13. He would go to high school. So yeah, he was quite serious. He was taking it very seriously.
There's an expression in the US, sitting duck, like a target for bullies and stuff. He must have been a real sitting duck in high school with the Sika in Poland.
Right, yeah.
So that's interesting. So you saw like how it changed him, but the practices or any of the philosophy or anything, it didn't attract you at first. So yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you remember the moment when you, because devotees always, if they've had like, it seems like if they've had a significant amount of sukriti from their past lives, they have this kind of like a light bulb moment when they realize that this is my thing. So did you have that moment, or was it more like a gradual thing?
I think it was more of a gradual thing, because I was already to some extent practicing spirituality. So it was more of a gradual thing. And but the more I got to know about what it is about, the ideal, the more I was drawn to that and attracted to that. I remember my brother would read to us stories from Krishna book or stories from Srimad Bhagavatam about Lord Nrsimhadev, and I would start going for walks with him, chanting together. So so then I mean quite quickly I realized that this is something where I really want to do. I want to practice this for sure.
So you must have been really young when you decided to basically become a devotee. Like, how old were you? 10 or something? Prahlad Maharaj.
I think maybe I was 9 or 10 or something like that.
Wow. So yeah. That's interesting. So did you like feel like I am a devotee, or was it more kind of like you were combining Christianity and Krishna consciousness?
No, I wasn't combining it. No, I was practicing just Krishna consciousness. It was quite natural for me, because there was no internal conflict. There was absolutely no internal conflict. I could see that, the goal is very similar. There are very similar values. It's just in a different kind of form. But it was very easy for me actually to kind of transfer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Kind of like what Bhaktivinoda says about Christianity, that it's like the closest religion to Vaishnavism.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah,
I think definitely
comes from the horse's mouth, since you were like a Christian at first, and then that's really interesting to me. That was so like seamless. Even you were so young, and it was a totally seamless transition like that.
Yeah.
So then you've basically been chanting since you were 10 years old, huh?
Yes, I had like a short break. So what happened? I started chanting, and soon after I started chanting, my brother stopped practicing. So that was a huge blow for me. That made it very, very difficult. I didn't know any devotees. I was very young. There were a few devotees in my town, but I didn't know them personally. Before, there were like regular meetings, but that wasn't happening anymore. So I was just left on my own, and I found it quite difficult. And so I got a little bit discouraged, and I stopped chanting maybe for 2 years. But at the same time, I knew that the only reason why I'm not doing this because I'm just on my own. I knew that that's the case, and I thought to myself, like, the very moment I'll meet someone who is practicing, I'll pick it up straight away. And then actually what happened, like maybe 2 years after, I met one guy who was a little bit attracted to devotees. He didn't know much philosophy or anything like that. But I talked to him and I asked him, like, do you wanna start chanting? And he said, yeah. And from that day I started chanting again, and I continued. So I had a little break, but
so basically you had to make a devotee to keep chanting yourselves.
yeah.
That was the first devotee you made, huh? Well, you preached.
Yeah, he unfortunately he didn't continue anything like that, but
at least
he helped me. He helped me very much.
Exactly, that's very cool. So then from there on, like, what happened after that? Like, did you connect with ISKCON, or like how did you continue your spiritual life?
So from then, like it's very interesting, but for a very long time I was kind of alone on my own, practicing. I was also very young, and every time I would meet devotees, I would see a devotee like walking down the street. I would be so excited, and after a few years, I started traveling to a temple in Warsaw, so it's ISKCON temple, and back then there was practically no other devotees than devotees from ISKCON, and I didn't know that there is anyone could be outside of ISKCON. There was just like devotees means ISKCON. And then I started studying at the university. I moved to a different city, and then I met some devotees from Sri Chaitanya Mission. So they are disciples of Siddha Sarupananda Paramahamsa. He's from Hawaii, I think. So back then they had like the largest center in the world, in like their sangha. There was like 60 people, and that was very interesting. That was a very interesting experience because the first time I saw them, there were some posters about Hare Krishna meetings. I went there, and I saw them, and they were not wearing sikhas. They were like some of them long haired. None of them were wearing dhotis. They were playing like drums and guitars and all of that. So my first impression was like, that's strange. Is this okay? Is this? But very quickly I realized, like, yeah, of course it's okay. Of course they are devotees, they have the guru, they try to serve him, try to love him. And that was a very good experience actually for me, because that kind of opened my eyes that there are some other devotees, other groups, and they're also sincere, and they follow their path. And then after that, I moved to London after I graduated my university. I moved to London. And then, as you mentioned in my bio, I met Ramagovinda. So I didn't know him from Poland. We didn't know each other. We were from different places, but we became friends. And he invited me for the retreat in Vrindavan. That you were there in Vrindavan. You both were there, and and I decided to go. I never heard about Guru Maharaj. Never heard anything about him. I never heard his name even. I didn't know who he was. And I just went there. I met Guru Maharaj. I met devotees, and yeah, that's how it started.
It's funny when you said the name of Guru Maharaj, he called me. It was like you called, you invoked him or something. I had to turn off my phone, unfortunately. But yeah, so I wanted to backtrack a little bit before the 2007 retreat. And that is, so you studied law, right? You became a lawyer, right? But I remember you telling me in Adaria about 10 years ago that you actually never worked a day as a lawyer.
Yeah, I just graduated, in law, so got master's degree. But after I graduated, because my family was already living in UK, so I just didn't want to be away from them. I wanted to live close to them, so I moved to UK, and just for practical reasons, like there's a different law system in UK. I would have to put a lot of work into that, a lot of finances that I didn't have, to practice that. If I stayed in Poland, of course I would go into that direction, but more for practical kind of and the circumstances, I never pursued that in my life. But also I was never that much attracted to it in the first place. I must say I never felt like that's something that I'm passionate about, or so I guess there's no loss there.
Yeah, I remember you telling me in Adaria that like the kind of people mostly that ended up in law school, you couldn't relate to them at all. Like they were all about money and getting ahead and all this like status and stuff. Was it a hard aspect for you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's like a lot of good people there, but I guess I didn't feel like this is something that I would like to center my life around, and it's not very much true, because you could use everything for Krishna, right? So it's not like, but somehow I just didn't feel that much attracted to it, and all this time I was thinking about actually going to ashram, you know, like it was on my mind all the time. And I was kind of like in between, like, should I start a career? Should I go to live in the ashram? And then I found myself that you know, if I don't go to ashram, I'm always thinking about it, I always regret that, you know. So it's better to do that, because I have to do it first, and then whatever, make some life changes. And so it was on my mind all the time.
So when did that start? Like, when did you start kind of desiring the ashram life?
Oh, that started when I was a teenager.
Wow.
But I never made the move. I started studying at the university, so that wasn't an option anymore. And then when I moved to UK, I was thinking about it, and one day Gurumach sent me a message, and I was thinking about it like quite intensely, you know. That was just before I went to Madhuban. That year I was thinking like, yeah, I really want to go. And Gurumach sent me an email on my birthday, like out of nowhere, you know, like, this is your birthday, and this is such a valuable life that you have, so use it wisely. And so when I got this email, I thought to myself like, yeah, this is the time that this year I'll definitely go. So I started some planning, and I wanted to go to Adaria, but I didn't get a visa. So for that reason, I went to Madhuban. And then and then I came back, and then I was thinking how to go to Adaria, you know, just making plans. It took me a little while to get a visa, and then actually before I moved there, I went there 1 year before for 3 weeks to kind of see if, you know, I can be there, because I've never been in an environment like that. And I was super excited, super enthusiastic, happy, you know, being there. It was so wonderful, such a wonderful place. So I came back, and for a year I kind of make plans, some arrangements, you know, save some money, and then I quit my job, and I moved to Adaria.
Let's backtrack a little bit. I definitely want to talk more about that, but I wanted to ask you the first time you met Guru Maharaj, and then also at least for me, the Vrindavan retreat was like a mind-blowing experience. But I want to hear your side of it. Like, just tell me a little bit about, like, when did you meet Guru Maharaj for the first time? What was your first impression, and then how did it grow from there?
Yeah, so when I went to Vrindavan and I met all of you there, like, besides Rama Govinda, I didn't know anyone, you know. And I'm rather like a shy person. I'm not really, I don't find it that easy to, you know, make get to know new people and make quickly friendships and anything like that. So I felt a little bit, it was a little bit like difficult, I must say, for a few reasons. One, that was my first experience of India. So there was this kind of cultural shock that it took me like a few days to kind of get used to it, you know. I wasn't expecting that. And also I didn't know the devotees. I didn't know it was kind of like a little bit like an outsider. But when I met Guru Maharaj, one thing that really struck me is that he's someone special. You know, that this is here's a person, and he's got something very tangible, very very real. You know, and that was my impression, like, straight away. There's like a sadhu. I didn't know what to think about it. You know, I didn't know anything about him, but I knew one thing, that it's very very good for me that I'm there. That's one thing that I knew. And last day, because I didn't want to leave without talking to Guru Maharaj, and I actually asked you for darshan, because you were arranging that.
I don't remember.
Yeah, and I was waiting outside, because that was like the last day, so it was like few hours left, and everyone was leaving. And I was in the courtyard there, just walking, chanting japa. And Guru Maharaj, because I was staying with Rama Govinda just next to Guru Maharaj, in the room next to Guru Maharaj. And he walked out of the room, and he asked me like, "Oh, you want to talk? So come." And he invited me in the room. I was like super, you know, nervous, didn't know what to say, didn't know. But one thing that he made me immediately very comfortable, like extremely comfortable, like talking to him. And I remember someone walked into his room. There was some to ask something. Someone wanted to talk to him, and he's like, no, I'm busy right now. I'm talking with Patrick. And he said, because I asked him, I knew that he's someone special, so I asked him, like, is there anything that I could do, some kind of service, anything small that I could be like connected to in some way. And he asked me, like, do you want me to look after you? I said yes. And this is like it started. And then the same year, because the retreat was in February, so the same year there was a retreat in Finland on the island, and I went there. And when Guru Maharaj saw me, he was a little bit surprised that I came, because he was like, "Oh, you're here, okay." But since then, I was trying to, like, every year to make the effort. That was like my priority, to go to Finland when it was organized in Finland, to go to Poland. Yeah, so my kind of relationship with Guru Maharaj was gradual, which also I'm very happy. I'm very happy about it, because like I've known Guru Maharaj for like 16 years, but I don't know who he is. I can't really understand really who he is. That's one that I know. I can't. I don't know. But the more time I spend with him, or listen to him, or meet him, I could see, like, more and more and more there. Like the depth that he has, the realization, the kind of qualities of character that he has. Like for me, he's like a real sadhu, and I feel like so fortunate that I have someone like that in my life. That's really like winning a lottery or something.
Yeah, for sure. So you met him for the first time in 2007, but how long did it take you to take initiation? When did you take initiation?
So I took Harinam in 2 years later. So I went to Madhuban. And Guru Maharaj was supposed to go there, but something happened. He couldn't come. So, but that same year, I met him in Finland, and and he gave me Harinam initiation. And then when I moved to Adaria in 2012, so he gave me Diksha initiation on Radhastani. So that was soon after I went there.
Nice. So okay, I'm kind of trying to track your whole journey here. So when you went back to Vrindavan, back to London from the Vrindavan retreat, did that like change in anything for you in terms of like did you already, I guess you did say that you had agreed with Guru Maharaj that you wanted him to look after you, which basically means that you'll be his disciple. So that was like, you decided then that you want to be Guru Maharaj's disciple. Is that accurate?
In a way, yes. There was like no kind of formal thing. I didn't know how it really worked back then. I didn't know what to make of it. But I knew that I definitely want to make an effort to see him, as whenever I can, and to have some connection, like to do some service. One thing that I knew that it's very good for me that I have connection with him, but very shortly, because that was like I met in 2007. When I went to Madhuban, of course, I already knew that I wanna. He's my guru, and I have a relationship with him, and he's a disciple. So it didn't take long, but when I first met Guru Maharaj, like as I said, I never heard about him before, so I absolutely didn't know who he was. So it kind of took me a little while to kind of get to know him, as a person, just find out who he is, and so yeah, something like that.
And so basically, then you went back and you were a postman back then, right? Wasn't that what you were doing?
Yeah, I was working as a postman. Yeah.
So you're just doing your practice and being a postman, and then you went to Madhuban. Now, in 2009, Madhuban was only like maybe 2 years old. And I was there in 2007, 2008, and I remember what it was like. So I'd love to hear your experience of what that kind of early day pioneering, what was it like for you? Because it's a huge, like, kind of like a cold turkey experience to go from like just being having a regular job in London to go to the, the jungles of Costa Rica to pioneer an ashram. So what was it like for you?
It was quite a shock, and because I had completely different expectations. I was going there thinking that I was constantly thinking of going to Adaria, so there's a temple, there's like a program, there's a schedule, we have classes, but so that was something that I was expecting, going to Madhuban. So when I went there, it was quite a shock, not in a negative sense or anything like that, but it was like, oh, like everyone was so busy, with doing just practical service. That was kind of like a shock to me, because I was surprised that, that kind of showed me that actually bhakti can also be like the regular, kind of menial service. I mean, theoretically I knew that, but I didn't have experience of that. So that was a very good experience to be exposed to that. And there was only 3 other devotees there, and everyone was super busy with planting and harvesting rice, planting beans, and doing many different things. So it was quite austere, and I was there in the rainy season. But also I think that was like my first kind of exposure to a more very, very secluded place. And there's just few people, everyone is busy. They meet each other like for like an hour a day or something, So that was difficult because I was on my own. I was with myself, and I never had that experience before. So it was quite interesting. But Madhuban itself is such a wonderful, like, amazing place. And the second time when I went there, so that was after, I think, like 5 years or something. So it was already developed, with many cabins and everything nicely made. And I could really appreciate that, I could really appreciate how this place changed and how much effort was put there to make that happen. And only like with few people, it's like it's a jungle. It's huge. And so that was a wonderful experience, but at the same time it was quite challenging because of the being such a seclusive environment, and just few of us there. So I had like a different expectations.
That always reminds me of this one movie. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about this. It's like based on a true story movie about this female saint, like a Christian saint. And she was so radical that she was kicked out of her monastery or something, and she decided to start a new monastery with only women, and so they built the thing themselves. And so then months into it, the other nuns start like revolting against the main lady, because they're just like, we're just working here, we came here to do spiritual practice, we're just like busting our butts here. They started like revolting against the leader. So it's like, it was always reminded me of how those days were. Like, it was just such heavy emphasis on practical service because we had to establish something, but it's definitely can be hard for the mind. So back then there was no temple program. Is that, I guess there was no, the temple extension didn't exist, right? There was just that cabin.
So just the cabin, and we had deities we had the Govardhan Shilas in the kitchen. And we had, so once a day we had, I think maybe it was in the morning, or maybe afternoon, just one kind of program. We had arati and sing something, maybe read. But, and on some days we didn't have even that because everyone was so busy, it was maybe raining, some mudslide or something happened, and we would have to deal with that. So, but yeah, it was very different to my expectation of like living in temple, having like a regular schedule, a lot of deity worship, and a lot of that. But as I say, it was a wonderful experience because, like Guru Maharaj just says, it kind of helped me realize, like very often he says this, you know, Skrabanam, Mopanam, and all this kind of, this practical service, and that was like a teaching for me. I had experience of that, and many of our acharyas like Jagannath Das Babaji, he always put an emphasis on that. Just go into garden, pick some flowers, and I'm not saying I understood that, but it helped me with appreciating that more. And after all of that is for Guru and for Krishna, so. I found it like it's very purifying. It's very powerful, I must say, this kind of service, especially that you're on your own. Like sometimes you may be struggling a little bit, you're tired, you this and that, but things they need to be done. So there is a great value in that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Braj Sundari, who was one of the originals, says that on Sunday there was a puja for the Shilas. Therefore, we did not have morning programs on that day.
Right.
Tidbit from one of the originals. What was I going to say? Yeah, well, I mean, it's so glorious, though, that it was, people like Gore and Sham and anybody who was in the original pioneering stage, you were there, and other devotees too. Like the existing Madhuban is like built on the backs of those devotees. Like they enabled this. First, it was Guru Maharaj. And like with Vrindavan, they got the whole thing going. And now it's like the Sham Sundar, Gaur Sundar, Praj Sundar took it from there. And now it's this like wonderful place that's like so accommodating for devotees and everything. So, I mean, that's very glorious in itself, that some devotees sacrificed for other devotees and for their guru. And now we have this beautiful place. So if we move on from there to 2012, that's when you moved to Adaria. And it's interesting, like we kind of went past each other because Vrindavan and I moved out of Adaria in 2011 in the late fall. So you moved in 2012. What time? What time of the year was it?
It was fall as well.
Okay, so about a year after. And so that had been, based on what you said, that had been kind of your dream, and then you finally got your dream. But so did you have the same experience as in Madhuban, that it was actually more difficult than you had expected, or what was your experience of Adaria?
No, I didn't have. I was like so happy and so enthusiastic and inspired when I came to Adaria. It was so wonderful, such a beautiful place. I mean, Madhuban as well, but such a beautiful place. The temple. I mean, and the fact that like devotees like you and you build it yourself. That's so wonderful. And the deities being there with Guru Maharaj and Agnidev and Ashram Maharaj was there. And I became friends with other devotees who were there, with Shyamananda, Mangaldar, Madhu Mangal. So we became like really close, We became like brothers, We spent, I was there for 2 years, so we spent all this time together and helping each other and supporting each other. So it was amazing. I was so inspired, so happy being there. But also, Adaria is also secluded. And that's what makes it a little bit challenging, for certain people, probably like me. So at some point, I started like struggling a little bit. I started struggling with my mind and yeah, so it was a little bit different. Like the first year was just wonderful, but then kind of winter and this and that. And winters are a little bit tougher. And
like right now, full rain. It's been raining for like a week, and but then it's gonna be another 8 days. So yeah, that's what it's like. You remember, and then you're in the corner. So let's see. When you came here, I can't quite remember what was going on, but what was the program like back then, and what were the aspects that you really enjoyed about the ashram life? Because you'd been like dreaming about this since you were a teenager. So what were the best aspects of that lifestyle for
Like,
you?
yeah, like for me personally, it's being in like Guru Maharaj's place, you know, that was the main thing. Be it Madhuban or Adaria, the fact that I was there and this is his place, you know. So I felt like um very like it's like a huge privilege. That's how I felt. And the fact that he was not there all the time, but just the fact that, you know, I know he's there in his house. I could see like in early hours, like, you know, his light on and he's chanting and so and having association with him. He would come, he would give classes, he would eat lunch with us and all of that. That was like the most wonderful thing. And the deities, this is his ashram, his deities, so that's like so special. And the program, like I mean, I stayed in temples, I, you know, being around devotees, but I never kind of lived for a prolonged period of time in a temple. So having this program, like classes, and I also wanted to learn, you know, wanted to learn to like to deity worship and cooking and different things, because I didn't have much experience with that, so I felt like I would like to learn that. So yeah, being Guru Maharaj, being there, deities and the devotees, and becoming friends with devotees. The fact that we had the Mangala Arati, then Gaura Arati, all of that, it's just so wonderful. It's like it's like every day was the same, right? But there was like this special moment in the morning when everyone comes. It's maybe still dark, and the door open, and there's Gauri there, and so like very beautiful moments. Yeah.
Nice. Um, so then you said that you started struggling after a couple, or like after a couple of years. This kind of stuff, I think it's like important to talk with devotees so that there's not this like shame around that, or some kind of like you kind of isolate the so-called negative experiences and then you act like everything's Jai Hari Bol all the time. So if you don't mind, I'm interested in hearing a little bit about what was it exactly that started like becoming difficult for you, and like what would you say was the main reason that you then decided to move out of Adaria?
Yeah. So I think I can only like speak for myself, right? But I think because I noticed I experienced that in Madhuban as well. But like all these ashrams, they're really far away from the world. So you really on your own. You really on your own. I mean, there are some other devotees, but it's not like a huge crowd or anything like that. So you're with your own for a long time, you know. And that may be a good thing, but I think in general, people what that causes it to all the maybe things that we may struggle emotionally or whatever we may have from our past to kind of come to the surface at some time, because like Gumar says, it's an ego-effacing path, and especially in this kind of environment, I mean, you wanna face that to some degree, you know, but at the same time, it's extremely it may be very overwhelming or even scary, because you're that's my kind of experience to some degree. You're facing your demons, you know. There's like purification and all of that. So things that you're really afraid in yourself, or maybe you're struggling or whatever, they're coming to the surface. So that was kind of like my experience, and after some time, these things started coming. And I started struggling, and like one thing I think, like, yeah, I mentioned that to you, like I had problems with sleeping, and I'm like struggling with that for a long time. But because of, you know, we had to wake up early morning because, you know, we in the ashram, so I was kind of sleep deprived a little bit, and this and that, and then things uh, coming through me. One thing that I was struggling, like I went there with this kind of mentality, all or nothing. And that was a big mistake, you know. Like I think one in one of your interviews you said like take it day by day. And I think this is like the best advice ever, you know. I thought to myself when I was going there, okay, I'm going there, and it's either I'll stay forever or I don't know. It's like a failure, you know. I didn't go there with the idea I'll go there for 1 year, 2 year, I'll see how it goes, and that wasn't good because I was putting a lot of pressure. So because it's day by day, like you don't have any sense of time, and this kind of idea that, okay, so I'm here, so I'm probably going to be here for the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe for the rest of my life. This kind of like a thinking, that just builds up the pressure. And then, like you said, there's this kind of shame around that I mean, I was very, very kind of well, one thing that I didn't know what was going on, like now I have, from the perspective of time, I have much better understanding of myself. I kind of matured as a person, and I can see it for what it was. But back then I couldn't understand it that well. So yeah, and there's this shame, there's this shame that I kind of I want to kind of like please Guru Maharaj, but then like, oh, I'm struggling, maybe I want to leave or something like this. I did feel shame connected with that. It wasn't easy. That's why I think it was kind of building up inside of me. I was struggling. I had to go to kind of like a breaking point. Then I realized, like, yeah, okay, now I see, like, probably I have to leave, and I have to address some things in me, first. Yeah. So yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's such a common like experience for, I would say, most people who join the ashram, is that like it becomes so hard, but then it's this all or nothing, like you said. It's so much like that.
Yeah.
At least for me, it's like do or die, rah rah rah. Like
Yeah.
a little bit of this macho thing on some level. It's like, I'm a, how Sridhar Maharaj always talks about. He has all these like war, what's the word, comparisons and stuff. So it kind of pumps young guys up a lot. And then you're some kind of soldier, and then you go to war, and then you realize, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. And I'm not the glorious hero that I thought I was.
Yeah.
And then there's that time when you start realizing, like, I don't think I can do this, but I said I was going to do this forever. I said it to myself. I gave a promise. And then that whole, like, it's such a humiliating process when you have to admit that actually I'm nowhere spiritually and all this stuff. And unfortunately, many people at that time, they either turn against the guru or they turn against the philosophy, at least for a short time, because that's, I guess it's like a psychological coping mechanism or something, not to be totally devastated by it. But it seems like you didn't have that. Maybe you're more humble than your average devotee or something, but somehow you didn't seem to have that. You realized that you had a problem, or like you had to work certain things out. And so then that's very interesting to me in terms of like when you went back to England, how was that like? Like, how did you start the process? Did it crash you for a while and then you got back on your feet, or what happened?
Actually, before we get into that, I just wanted to mention something, because like you're right. I have like very similar kind of realizations, from my experience, and it's very much you have, I had this idea that I'm kind of like someone who, like you said, like the soldier, be like this, and then the world is crumbling, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, I thought I'm somewhere there, but I'm like way down there. It's a very humbling experience, and there's this whole thing of the like preserving ego, because it's not shameful in a way that is, there's nothing wrong, but I just want to hold on to this image that I have, like, oh, this and that. So it's very humbling, and that's very true. Usually people in this kind of circumstances, because there's this kind of emotions and all this conflict inside, that people at some point they can't deal with that, and it has to go somewhere. There has to be some reaction, and I completely agree with you on that. And actually, I'm not that like humble or anything, because I like internally I was going through like difficult moments, and it wasn't conscious, it wasn't conscious, like I was thinking something negative, but I had many things, like many thoughts, like, or feelings that, like, for example, like, am I being appreciated, like, am I being noticed, things like that. And back then I couldn't understand that well. And so, but now for what I can, from the perspective I can see it for really what it was. I was given an opportunity, so I was grew much like welcome me in his home. You know, he gave me like, you have all the environment, you have all the tools you need, you know, you just for growth, for sacrifice, you know. And then I thought to myself, like, okay, but what am I getting back? You know, like I'm just feeling like it's tough, you know, like I don't want to be here anymore. I was expecting that I'll get something else, you know, but what I got from that, it was purification, which was hurtful, you know, it was painful. And so it's very difficult to kind of harmonize these two things. But really what I was getting is, now that I can look at it, you know, what I was getting, just opportunity to sacrifice, to purify the heart. And it's just, it can be painful, but it's very valuable. And that was a great lesson. I mean, that was, I'm so happy about it, because that really, you know, helped me to mature and like a little bit, and just appreciate devotees as well, because I was there with other devotees, and you know, I wasn't like some there was other devotees who were like to some degree maybe at some point struggling. And so with it, like you said, it's a very common thing, because you're left with your mind, and there's this whole purification that's taking place, which is like, it's tough. So yeah, so there were other devotees, but it helped me really appreciate. I meant, like, so now how I look about it, if someone is practicing Krishna consciousness and is living in the ashram, making sacrifice for the guru, and doing things. I mean, we don't know what's going on inside this person, so we don't know how much this person is really sacrificing. You know, I remember one of our god brothers, and I mean, he was living in the ashram and everything, but for him it was way more. He had to put a lot more effort, because he didn't have the maybe capacity. You know, for some people it may be easier, for some people it may be much harder. It really depends on the experiences from your childhood or your previous samskaras. So not everyone is it kind of looks like everyone's giving equally, but it's not necessarily the truth. So it kind of really helped me to appreciate devotees more, because everyone is individual, everyone is struggling with something. At the end of the day, we as a devotees, we're supposed to go through another devotee, which is not an easy task. It's messy, like yeah, it is messy. So to do that, and that may be very costly for some people, even more than the others. So it's just, yeah, that helped me to appreciate devotees more. A very valuable lesson for me.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, especially nowadays, there's this very common idea that spirituality is what the Uttamadhikari stage is, and anything below that is not spiritual. Like if you struggle, there must be something wrong with your practice.
Yeah,
that's I constantly keep thinking about like anartha nivritti as like being in rehab, or like going through like withdrawals from some kind of addiction, because that's really what it is. And so then if anybody says, or if I start thinking it should be easier, then I'm just like, well, look at some guy who's trying to get rid of heroin, you know. I mean, they want to die, like they are puking their brains out.
Yeah.
The last thing they want to do is to get clean, but they know that that's part of the purification. Like it's just so intense. And that, I don't know, to me, I don't know if this works for other people, but for me, that always gives solace. It's like, yes, it's actually working that I feel so crappy, you know, something's happening. I mean, it could be bad, of course, then, you know, that's tricky too. You could be doing something wrong, you're pushing yourself in the wrong way, and it feels terrible, and you're like, yes, this is anartha nivritti because I feel so bad. But you know, it's like you said, like there's no way around it, that it's a painful process at a certain level. And then there's this like enjoying spirit, I think, that makes us want to feel like it should be like the Uttamadhikari stage at all times, that we're always blissful and we love everybody, and you know, rainbows and unicorns, kind of like that. So we only have 4 minutes until questions. Man, I could talk with you like another 2 hours, no problem. But let me, the last, I think a good close-up, I think, would be a closing thing would be, you had a bit of an adventure with Shamananda in Adaria with the cows. Can you tell that story?
With the cows.
The car, you guys.
Oh, with the car. Oh, yeah. That's it's a little bit. So we had it's a funny story though. We had this situation when actually you were going Guru Maharaj, right, to Poland, I think, maybe, or somewhere, you were flying somewhere, right, and you forgot your passport, and you realized that
It was. Oh yeah. So I was actually the culprit. I've totally written myself out of the story.
yeah, it was your passport, yeah. So yeah, you forgot your passport, and it was too late. It was too late for you to go back to Adaria from San Francisco, right? So then we had this emergency when someone had to, in order for you to get on a plane, someone had to find your passport and drive a truck towards San Francisco, and then another devotee was driving from San Francisco. Kind of, we were supposed to meet in the middle to save time and get your passport. And then, so I think Guru Maharaj called Shamananda, and he said, like, someone has to do it, but there was only me and him at that time, and none of us has driving license. Actually, and we drive a car, and Shamananda has a little bit experience of racing go-karts. So he asked me, like, can I do it? I said, like I don't know, I don't know how to do it, like. But Shamananda said that I was really impressed by him. That was so nice, because he said he also didn't have driving license, anything like that. But he said, okay, I was born to do it. If Guru Maharaj asked me, then I was born to do it, and I'll do it. So we went into the track, and we kind of split the duties. So he was driving, he was behind the steering wheel. I think I was looking in the rear view mirrors to kind of see what was going on, if he has to slow down or something, And we went down from Adaria, and we went to Philo, a little bit further, I think. I don't remember, the Boonville maybe, or yeah. And then we met a devotee, so we didn't have to drive far. But that was quite a funny story. But again, Shamananda is the hero who like really took the responsibility and like took up the challenge. So.
Nice. And for those who've never been to Adaria, these roads are like not easy to drive here. It's very steep, and there's not paved. There's all kinds of bumps and stuff in the road. It's this loose gravel and stuff. And Agni once drove off the road and flipped his car when he was delivering milk for us. So yeah, anything could have happened. And it's so funny that I'd completely written my own, screw up out of the story. I thought you guys had to like take cows to somewhere. I had a totally different version of it. Anyway, well, thanks for saving me, for not having to stay back. It was a great festival in Poland. I got my passport. I had my passport here in the cabin for some reason. That's what happened. I forgot to take it with me. Okay, well, that was an excellent ending. And then we have a few minutes left. So if anybody has any questions for Gokul, please ask your questions.
What is your any thoughts for the future? Any thoughts for the future in London?
Sorry, what are my plans for the future?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
In general.
So, well, currently, I started like a career, and so I moved into software development. So actually today, before this interview, I had my first job interview, and I finished like 10 minutes before this started. So I wasn't sure if I will make it. So I'm starting this. I've been one thing that I kind of decided that it's important for me after having experience of being an Adaria and Madhuban, is to work on my emotional life and kind of heal things so that it will be easier for me in the future. Like it will definitely give fruits in my practice. I could honestly see that already. But in the future, I would love to go back. Like live in the ashram or close to the ashram with devotees, and I would like to focus more on that. And I kind of understood. Thanks to these experiences that I had that we were talking about today, that I need to kind of heal certain things in myself, to better embrace my path. So that's kind of like something what I'm working on. At least that's my motivation, And I'm also trying to maybe at some point started working remotely, just traveling more, maybe visiting Guru Maharaj more, maybe going to Madhuban more often, and kind of go into that direction, so that in like 10, 20 years from now, I'll be like, my life will be more focused on that.
Thank you. Yes. Might see you sometime when I'm in England. Terrible.
There you go.
Anybody else?
I could ask a question if there is no one else. Previously, there was in the interview, also one of the questions was, what would you recommend? Like, what is the thing you can say from looking back at your spiritual path? What you would say that, like, how you have changed, and also what you would recommend to the devotees? Like, what is like for you the most important thing? What to do to practice or something?
So I would say a few things. So first would be how important is guru, how important is like Guru Maharaj, in my life, in our lives. So like these experiences that I was talking about, they were at some point like quite humbling, and I think that's very good, because it helped me to realize that it really comes down to the mercy that we get from our guru, from Krishna, from other devotees. It kind of clearly showed me that it's not in my it's not what I can do, because I can't do really much, like. So just how much mercy we are getting from Guru Maharaj to have such a person in our lives. That's just amazing. And like Guru Maharaj says, it's not what you know, but who you know. And ultimately in Bhakti, it is like that, to have someone in your life who has such a relationship with Krishna, and that he kind of knows you, kind of remembers you, and this is extremely fortunate. And another thing that we were talking about is that it's actually, I have very similar realizations to Gunishta. So it's very good that we feel that we are going through nata nivritti. It's a very good thing, and because that makes it, we can only, what I'm trying to say is that we can only receive mercy if we are humble and sincere, and if like we have this kind of idea that by our own strength we're doing this, we're that, we can never like open ourselves up. So these experiences that I have, like, I consider them a mercy from Krishna, because it was to some degree like kind of dismantling my ego, like bit by bit. So I look at it completely in a different light. Before, like, I would feel like, oh, I'm struggling, this is wrong, I should feel bliss or something. I absolutely don't look at it like that anymore. I'm actually happy because I know something's going on, and the more heart gets cleansed, then the more mercy the more mercy we can receive. Another thing would be to be more kind of try to understand that everyone is struggling, you know, as a devotees, not to judge one another, not to try to kind of measure where someone is at, you know. It's not possible. And another thing is to kind of distinguish that the struggles that we are going through, like the struggles that I had the ashrams, they're not really coming from the other side. So they're not really coming from Krishna, like it's like something's bad happening or whatever we're going through, not pretty, but it's all coming from inside. And that was actually my realizations after some time, like when I was in the ashram, I was struggling, so I felt like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with the environment, maybe I'm not being appreciated enough, I'm not being seen enough, I'm not being this, and I maybe that's not right, that's not fair, that's not this, I'm tired, I'm cold, you know, things like that. It wasn't conscious, but on subconscious level, all of that is there. But so then I like, is this something wrong here? Like, is it not working? You know, like what is going on? But from the perspective of time, it just showed me like, no, it's like in an environment like that, with this ego facing path that bhakti is, we have like a mirror in front of us, and everything that is inside that is like undesirable, we have to deal with that. So I would say that kind of keep that in mind, that it's not coming from the other side. This is something that we have to deal, we have to solve, we have to heal. And it's an opportunity for purification and for growth. So always kind of appreciate that what's coming from that side is always mercy. It may take like in a different form. Maybe we can look at it, but we may see like that doesn't look like mercy or something. But there's always mercy coming in, and it is for our good, even if we can't understand it at a particular moment. So there's this kind of, I'm not saying that I have like a lot of trust or something like that, but I really like this statement of Srila Sridhar Maharaj when he said that, and I had it from one of the devotees here in London. He said that Krishna is not like he will take you in a dark alley and he will stab you in your back, you know. So he'll not do that. So whatever we think we are struggling, just to have this appreciation and a little bit of trust that it's for our own good. Sorry, maybe I went a little bit too long with this, but
no, that was excellent. Really, really nice points. Yeah, like I said, I could definitely do this longer, but I guess the idea is to keep them kind of short. Unless, does anybody else have a quick question to Gokul? Okay, well, with that, we can wrap it up. But thanks so much for giving this interview. And I don't know, this just really, again, like confirmed to me that how important it is. Like, you have all these awesome things to say. And since you don't put yourself out there, otherwise, it's good to pull people like you out, and then you get to talk and like share your understanding and stuff, because it's very useful. It's a great reminder. It does create the sense of like connection and community. So I really appreciate that. And I will be doing this series maybe every 6 weeks or something, because we have a certain kind of schedule for the Tattva classes. And I'm hoping, I haven't talked to Maharaj yet, but I'm hoping that next one who I'm going to interview is Bhakti Abhay Ashram Maharaj, since he hasn't been interviewed in this series yet. So let's see what happens, maybe in 6 weeks or something. But thank you everybody for coming, and let's stay in touch through Tattva and the Sunday calls and everything. Haribol.
Thank you, Haribol.